Hi everyone. I'm gonna talk to you about hemoglobin. Okay, so as you can see, the hemoglobin is made up of 4 parts. You can kind of see here, but right here, you can clearly see that there are 4 different parts to the structure, and which makes it a quaternary structure. And you can see right here that this green right here is the hemoglobin. It's the heme group. And in that's where the iron binds to this molecule. And you can see it like super well in this animated drawing of hemoglobin. And so hemoglobin is a polymorphin structure, and it helps with cooperative binding, and it's an oxygen acceptor. So it helps to accept the oxygen in the red blood cells. So as the hemoglobin is in the red blood cells, it works with the environment that is around the red blood cell to help accept the oxygen that is surrounding it. It also helps with getting rid of the oxygen. We'll go into that here in a second. Okay, so basically oxygen goes from the lungs, and so oxygen enters the lungs, and it goes into it goes throughout the rest of the body, and it's distributed through the red blood cells and the hemoglobin that's in the red blood cells. And this occurs through allosteric inhibition, which means that it basically helps it to bind and prevent binding from other parts in the body. And so basically as the allosteric inhibition occurs, the CO2 and the protons are being released in the body, and that creates a concentration that makes the hemoglobin want to go and distribute oxygen to that area. So if you were doing a workout, let's say you're doing a leg workout and you're doing squats or some other workout, you're doing your squats, let's go with that, and your quadricep muscles and your calves and your hamstrings are all working really hard during that particular exercise. And so what happens is the hemoglobin, the body is saying, oh, hey, we have a more acidic environment. And so in doing that, the oxygen is like, hey, we're going to go help you out. And so what it does is it takes the red blood cells and they travel to the muscles that have the more acidic environment, and they distribute oxygen to that particular area. And so you can see that as the oxygen goes into the red blood cells from the lungs, so you're breathing in because it's a heavy workout, and then the red blood cells travel along all the way down to your leg muscles, and then as they enter that area, the oxygen exits the red blood cells. And so so it helps to normalize and basically kind of create an equilibrium for that environment. And whether that could be a continuing process throughout the duration of your workout. And so the oxygen reaction occurs as the red blood cells go throughout the bloodstream, and the oxygen binds to the hemoglobin due to the iron that is there and the hemoglobin molecule. And so the red blood cells in the capillaries have a bunch of oxygen, because in capillaries that's where the red blood is, and it's oxygen rich. And so then as the oxygen is distributed to the more acidic areas of the muscles and the rest of the body, where the oxygen needs to be distributed to, so the oxygen is leaving the red blood cells, and they return back to the lungs through the vein system. And through this, the carbonic acid that is being produced in this reaction helps with the release of the protons, which helps to allosterically inhibit the binding of the hemoglobin. So basically, as the red blood cells are going and distributing the oxygen into this more acidic environment with the protons, they essentially go and allosterically inhibit the binding of the hemoglobin to let the oxygen be dumped into that area, which therefore allows for the distribution of the oxygen. So as the oxygen lets go, so this chart really helps to describe that. So with the right shift, that means that more oxygen, more oxygen is binding. And so as this occurs, the oxygen can continue to bind, and the more that oxygen binds to those hemoglobin molecules, the more the faster it happens. So it basically creates a snowball effect where there's more and more and more, but then it does top out kind of here near the top, where you can see that, yes, the initial allowance of the oxygen into the hemoglobin, it creates this like super fast binding reaction, but then it kind of slows out because there's a maximum that it hits, so then the reverse of that would be the oxygen letting go, which occurs with the left shift here, and so there's more oxygen leaving, which happens to be a slower curve at first, and then it just drops off. So they're kind of opposite reactions, but they work really well hand in hand to create a system that works well. And so basically the oxygen goes where the most CO2 is. So back to our workout, when your muscles are working out, you release CO2 and this more acidic environment is present. So therefore it allows for the oxygen to let go of the binding of the hemoglobin molecule much better and easier than it would be if it was just a normal environment. And so basically the more, like I said earlier, the more that oxygen lets go, the more likely more will let go, and vice versa. The more that it binds, the more likely oxygen will bind. Thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed this.